We live in an age where democracy is almost sacred. We are taught to believe that giving everyone a vote is the highest form of justice and that freedom and equality naturally flow from the ballot box. When politicians want to show their commitment to democracy, they take photos at the Parthenon in Athens, the birthplace of this great political experiment. But here lies a paradox. One of Athens' greatest minds, Socrates, did not share this faith. Through the writings of his student Plato, we discover that Socrates viewed democracy not as a blessing, but as one of the most dangerous forms of government. And the reasons he gave nearly 2,500 years ago still resonate with the problems we face today. To understand Socrates' critique, we must remember the world he lived in. Athens, in the 5th century BC, was a city proud of its democracy. Every free male citizen could vote directly in the assembly. Important decisions, laws, wars, alliances were not made by kings, but by ordinary citizens. This system was revolutionary. It gave a voice to fishermen, farmers, merchants, craftsmen. It stood in sharp contrast to monarchies and oligarchies of other Greek cities. But democracy also brought instability. Athens experienced radical swings in policy, often driven by passion rather than reason. In one moment, the people voted for peace. In the next, they voted for war. One year, they exiled a leader. The next year, they begged him to return. The same assembly that had celebrated Socrates as a teacher would later condemn him to death. Socrates saw firsthand how dangerous unrestrained democracy could be. In Plato's Republic, Socrates offers his famous analogy of the ship. Imagine a large vessel preparing for a long voyage. The sailors quarrel over who should be captain. None of them has studied navigation, yet each insists he deserves to steer. They flatter the crew, they argue, they fight. Meanwhile, the true navigator, the one who actually knows the stars, the winds, and the sea, is mocked as useless. Would you trust your life to such a ship? Of course not. Only someone trained in the art of navigation should command. For Socrates, politics is no different. Governing a city is a skill. It demands knowledge of justice, virtue, and the common good. But in democracy, leadership is not given to the wise. It is given to whoever can persuade the crowd. The result is chaos at sea, a city led not by wisdom, but by shouting voices competing for power. Socrates believed that voting is not an intuition, it is a skill. Just as we train pilots to fly planes or doctors to heal bodies, citizens should be trained before they are entrusted with the power of a vote. Democracy, however, assumes that every citizen is equally capable of making wise decisions simply by being born free. For Socrates, this was madness. He argued that without proper education, democracy is little more than mob rule, where passion outweighs truth and opinion outweighs knowledge. This was not just a theory. Socrates himself was destroyed by the very democracy he criticized. In 399 BC, he was accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. His accusers were not kings or tyrants, but fellow Athenians. A jury of 500 ordinary citizens voted on his case. By a slim margin, they condemned him to death. In Plato's Apology, Socrates defends himself, declaring that he is a gadfly sent by the gods to awaken the city. But his words fell on deaf ears. Democracy silenced one of its greatest voices. For Plato, this was proof that democracy cannot guarantee justice. If a crowd can condemn the wisest man in Athens, then democracy is not the rule of reason, but the rule of ignorance. Socrates also warned that democracy inevitably falls into demagoguery. He gives us a striking image. Imagine two candidates in an election. One is like a doctor, the other like a sweet shop owner. The doctor tells the people, "I will give you medicine, discipline, and restrictions. It will be painful, but it will heal you." The sweet shop owner says, "Forget the doctor. I will give you what you desire. Pleasure, indulgence, and comfort without limits." Who will the crowd choose? The sweet shop owner, of course. but in doing so, they harm themselves. For Socrates, democracy creates this exact danger. Leaders rise to power not by speaking the truth, but by flattering the people, and the people, blinded by desire, reward those who deceive them. Athens had a living example of this in Alcibiades. He was young, brilliant, handsome, and irresistibly charming. The people adored him. But Alcibiades cared more for glory and personal ambition than for wisdom. He persuaded the assembly to launch the Sicilian expedition, a massive military campaign that ended in disaster. Athens lost thousands of men, hundreds of ships, and its power in the Mediterranean. For Socrates, Alcibiades was the embodiment of democracy's weakness. The people had not chosen a wise leader. They had chosen a charismatic manipulator, and the city paid the price. Socrates went further. He argued that democracy does not end with freedom. Left unchecked, it decays into its opposite, tyranny. How? First, the people demand more freedom. They resist authority, discipline, and tradition. Every citizen believes he has the right to do whatever he wants, but this excess of freedom leads to disorder. Families, schools, and laws lose their authority. Chaos spreads. Then, in the midst of chaos, the people cry out for order. They look for a strong leader, someone who promises to protect them. A charismatic figure rises, promising safety, prosperity, and strength. The people give him power, but soon this leader becomes a tyrant, ruling not for the good of the city, but for his own desires. Thus, democracy, in the name of freedom, destroys itself and gives birth to tyranny, the very system the Athenians most feared. It is crucial to see that Socrates was not simply elitist. He did not argue that only the rich or noble should rule. He believed that anyone, rich or poor, could, in principle, govern wisely if they sought truth and cultivated reason. What he rejected was democracy as birthright, the idea that every citizen, without reflection or education, is fit to make decisions of life and death for the entire city. Instead, he imagined a democracy of the mind, a system where the vote belonged only to those who had disciplined their souls, learned to reason, and cared more for justice than for personal gain. Socrates' critique of democracy was not hatred of freedom. It was love of wisdom. He feared that without wisdom, democracy would collapse into chaos, demagoguery, and tyranny. His own death at the hands of a democratic jury showed how tragically right he was. Today, we continue to celebrate democracy as an unquestionable good. But Socrates' voice calls across the centuries, democracy is only as strong as the education of its citizens. A vote is not just a right, it is a responsibility. And responsibility requires wisdom. Otherwise, we will keep electing sweet shop owners who flatter us instead of doctors who heal us, and in the end, we will destroy ourselves with our own ignorance.